country up there, isn't it?
It is, yeah. He may holiday in the New Forest, but he definitely lives in Yorkshire.
Does he?
Well, he hasn't been on holiday too long down here then.
So yeah, I became an RE teacher, and my vicar. I first felt called to ordination when I was about 18, 19, and had a conversation with the pastor at the church I went to, had a conversation with my father-in-law who's a vicar, and decided to sit on it for a little bit to see if it was just a rush of blood to the head, given that I'd only just become a Christian. So I did the degree in religious studies, and then went on teaching RE, and then my vicar said, I've got something to tell you. Okay, what is it? We were at Spring Harvest, we were sat in the Sun and Moon pub having dinner, and he said, I think I've got something to tell you. I went, okay. He went, I think you're called to ministry. I was like, because he'd no idea that that's what I originally had thought about 6 years before that, I think it was. So from there I went through all the process of going to the diocese, going to the national church, and then trained for ordination, and was ordained 3 years ago.
And you've never looked back. You enjoy it.
Love it. Wouldn't do anything else in the world. It's absolutely brilliant. Very, very hard, but brilliant. Wouldn't do anything else.
And you get paid millions of pounds for doing it.
Oh yeah. When I was a teacher.
Neil Dell by now.
Yeah. Really.
So how does your sort of working day when you're active in your church? What's it made up of?
It changes day to day depending on
the demands of
on what day of the week it is, on what time of year it is, on what's happened in people's lives. Our day tends to start every day with morning prayer. We sit together, we read the scriptures, we pray, and from there it can be staff meeting. It can
You're obviously attracted to youth as well, with the teaching and the rock band and what have you. You must be.
I did enjoy being a teacher. It's something I kind of had to give up, being a teacher. So, you know what it's like when you have something that's a big part of your life and you're called to do something else?
Yeah.
You get to a point where you're prepared to give it up, and I kind of gave that up. Yeah. So I'm not a youth worker.
Right.
How
does the rock band fit into your ministry?
There's a big question. For a start, it's my hobby. It's my pastime. We used to play in a soul band. We've basically, since we met each other, I've been playing since we were teenagers. You've been playing since you were 8, was it? I was about 12, 13.
Well, what instruments do you play?
I play bass guitar and sing.
And Rob?
I'm a lead guitarist.
Lead guitarist, all right. Well, I play guitar.
I've got a Les Paul.
I've got a Taylor.
I've got a Les Paul.
Yeah. Have you? What kind?
Custom.
Custom shop. What year?
I don't know actually.
No, you had it a few.
Is it black?
It's black Beauty.
Black Beauty.
Oh, you got Black Beauty. 3 pickup. Gold hardware.
Yeah.
Ah.
2 pickup.
2 pickup. Then it's not Black Beauty, is it? Isn't Black Beauty the 3 pickup version of it? I've got a black one. Custom shop. It's you used to have white binding. It's now got cream binding. It's from 1980 with silver hardware. So almost identical to yours, except you've got gold hardware. It's amazing. Get guitarists together and we'll go completely sidetracked and start talking about guitars rather than talking about the question we were actually asked.
I don't remember what it was.
The question was about how it fits into my ministry.
You're listening then?
I was.
He's a curate. He has to listen.
I think it's too much, really, isn't it? Because in some ways it's what keeps us sane outside of our work. Because I think everybody needs that, don't they? We all need a hobby. But then we also have, there's our rock band that's got in some ways nothing to do with anything else in our lives. It's just a hobby. But then we also have a kind of Christian band that is a worship band as well, and that's something that we do kind of within church worship as well, that is rock oriented as well, and we play. We've played at Greenbelt last year, some worship service there, and we've done that within some local churches around about Yorkshire as well. So
When you go out playing at the pubs, then is it like a form of outreach? Is it Christian music that you sing?
no, not at all.
No.
It's 80s rock music.
Oh, right.
Smith, Whitesnake, Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
You know, it's just classic rock. It's just for fun.
But that said, when it's a pub that's close to our house, the pub tends to be filled with the church.
That's true.
They all come out. And
How many in the
ranging from-
congregation of your church?
I'm
Which
actually
church?
at 4 churches, so
Oh,
the
right.
one I'm predominantly working
So you
at,
go around the 4 different
Yeah,
churches.
The one I predominantly work at, there are 50, 60 regular
Yeah. Nice
people
number,
who
isn't it?
come. If everybody goes on holiday, it can be very, very sparse. If everybody's there at the same time, it can be very, very full. You know how it is with a church.
We have them
So you
churches in
go around 4 different churches, looking after 4 different
I
congregations.
predominantly work in one of them, but I'm licensed to a team. We're a team ministry.
I
There's
see.
3 parishes.
All right, yeah.
I predominantly work in one parish, and another. I used to go to church before I was ordained in one of the churches in the team, so I don't tend to do as much there. You know, it was like for Jesus, he found it very difficult to
Teach in his own
teach in his
hometown.
hometown.
Yeah, that's right.
And it is.
They never would listen
It's
to
nice
him.
when I do occasionally go there. I get to see all these people who I know. I was there on Sunday, and I stood up to preach. And there I was with a congregation who I know everybody's name.
And they knew you.
They know me. And it's
And
great.
there's nothing
it's on
worse,
a-
is there?
On an occasional basis, but
Yeah.
I could imagine a situation in a church where I've worshipped where you have to make some tough decisions, and everyone goes, "Oh, it's just Rob. We remember him from when he was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you know? So yeah. So we find that certainly on a local basis, the band who plays in the pub tends to end up with everybody ranging from the younger ones want to bring their kids along to come and see us in the local, and we also have the older ones who will sit there with a glass of sherry and what is very strange in a rock pub watching little old ladies with a glass of sherry, but they will turn out in force and fill the place, and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
We're going down the pub that Vicar's playing again.
Right, down the pub, yep.
So I guess it's a kind
that's
of,
great.
I suppose it's kind of outreach that people locally start.
Very
with.
low key.
They're then knowing that, you know, the vicar and some of the local Christians are normal people who do normal
Yeah.
things.
They all know that
Yeah.
up on stage it's the vicar who's playing.
Yeah.
They call me the vicar, even though I'm not really
He's really
the
an
vicar. I'm a
assistant
curate. But they all call me the vicar.
Yeah.
That's right, they call me the vicar on Facebook.
You find it a rewarding, occupation.
Being the curate or being
Yeah,
the,
no, just what you do.
what I
you
do.
know.
Yeah. There's
you-
nothing more rewarding.
Yeah,
than, It's a great privilege being invited in to share people's lives at the happiest times and also at the saddest times, and being with
Yeah.
people as they
Yeah.
piece together the world in which they live, as they put together the relationships that they're forming with
Yeah.
people, and then come and ask me to marry them, or
Yeah.
as they are or holding the hand of someone who's dying. It's
Oh, amazing, yeah.
a terrible and wonderful privilege at the same
Absolutely,
time
yeah,
to be
yeah.
invited into.
And in that sort of environment, you can get very close to the people, can't you? Because there's not a vast number of them to deal with. So you can get pretty involved with them personally, I should think.
I mean, when you talk about a church of having 50 to 60 members, it's a very intimate setting. It sounds like a
Absolutely.
lot of people, but
No.
when you've been with people for 3 years, 4
Yeah,
years,
you
5
get to
years,
know
6
them,
years,
yeah.
you get to know everybody, and you can see from someone's face how they are rather than having to ask them.
That's
You know,
right,
And
yeah,
that's
Yeah.
I think the discernment does come in there too.
Especially with Yorkshire folk.
Well, I think it's one of the great privileges of being part of the local church. I mean, when you talk about mega churches, it has its place, but there's something about being part of a local community. People who don't come to church know me. They know me because I walk around wearing my dog collar and we talk. And people who I've never met before refer to me as our vicar. It's
Yeah,
like they have
yeah,
some sort of ownership of me, which is
yeah,
is
yeah.
bizarre. Even though
But
we've
that's
never met,
Yorkshire,
we've
isn't it?
never-
Our vicar, that is Yorkshire. Tom.
Yeah, in some respects it is.
Yeah, it's good though, isn't it? It's nice.
It is. It's
Must
nice,
be a nice
it's good,
feeling.
but it's very worrying.
What the responsibility of
It's a
it.
heck of a responsibility,
Yeah,
is that?
sure.
You know.
When
Touching
you
lives of people.
grow up and you are a vicar, will you
He
have
speaks
to-
as an old man.
You'll have to get a move, will you? Where will they send you?
Yeah, you in the Church of England, you spend up to 4 years as an assistant curate before you go off to be a vicar somewhere. And I'm at the moment end of 3 years. Is it July the something, isn't it? Which means that last week it must have been 3-year anniversary of me being ordained. So
I know some curates have been there 18 years though.
yeah, maybe 18 years ago that worked. But certainly now I'm looking for somewhere to move to.
So it could happen quite soon.
It could happen soon. It could be another 12 months. But I know that at the end of 12 months my licence is up. So I need to find somewhere.
And is it a very lively church, and is it very evangelical, or is it very traditional?
The church.
Is
It's eclectic.
Very eclectic. It is.
Church
It
of England.
was very, very, very uber high church, and it still has memories of that.
yeah.
But it, because there are still some people who remember when it was very, very high church, and the town remembers when it was very, very high church. But it had a turnaround team. The congregation got down to, I think it was 6, and the diocese invested in the church and they planted a church into the church that was already there. They had a thing called the turnaround team, which was an initiative that the whole country looked at at Wakefield Diocese to see what it was doing with turnaround teams, putting together teams of evangelists, someone who was ordained, members of laity, members of the congregation who would go in and put a congregation into a building and see if it invest for a number of years to see if this was a place that would be a viable Christian presence in the town. And so we have a screen, we have sometimes band, sometimes CDs, but
Mixture of old and new music.
worship group, very much a mixture of old and new music. Some very, very modern stuff. I've just been learning some new songs this week, and some wonderful ancient hymns that we still sing.
Yeah.
It can be, depends on what time of year it is. We're very much tied into the seasons of the church, so we celebrate Christmas and Easter with gusto. So on Easter Sunday we had the fire outside, we lit the candle, I was in full vestments, we had incense. We have incense every week, don't we?
True, but
pretty much.
swinging incense.
Did we swing incense? No, we didn't.
Be nice.
I've never done that. Never done that since I was ordained. Not since I was at theological college. We lit it inside the
that's
the
right,
Easter
it's in
garden.
the
We
garden,
moved it.
that's it,
I took charge of it, but
we
I
have
didn't
incense
swing
every
it.
week.
And we had a band and a full band and a time of worship, and then we renewed our baptism vows, and I splashed everybody with water. And we celebrated the Eucharist. And at the end of the service, we had one of the older members of the congregation who remembers it being very high church saying, "That was a lovely mass, I really enjoyed that." And then we had the people who were wearing charismatic t-shirts with slogans on them come up and say, "That was a lovely praise service, I really loved that." And that was me thinking, well, which one was it? Was it a high church mass, or was it a lovely praise service, or was it all of these things all at the same time? So yeah, we're very eclectic. We like, we embrace church traditions, but we embrace them for what they are. You know, it's not stuck in the past. This is modern worship, and we love the traditions of the church.
Yeah, that's a question I've got here actually from Rachel. Why do you think the more sacramental forms of worship, like you were involved with the Green Belt, are now becoming more popular?
Oh man, I could talk about that for hours and still not find the answer. For me, I come from a non-church background into a non-conformist Baptist church. From there to the Church of England. From an evangelical church in the Church of England to a more middle of the road church to then go to. I went to Murfield for a year to the College of the Resurrection, which is as high church as it gets. And I embraced all of it. I love all of it. I question everything. I question everything from both ends of the spectrum and the middle. What is its place? Why is it important? Why? I was asked, why do you anoint people with oil? And I answered, because I went to a low church where they taught me to read the Bible. I read the Bible. It told me to anoint the sick with oil. And it's that questioning that I do with everything. It's funny, if you put me in a high church, everybody thinks that I'm a low church evangelical. If you put me in a low church, everyone thinks I'm a high church Catholic. Why is the sacramental so important? We come up with all these ideas and ways of trying to engage people in different senses, and we say to people, if only there was some way we could come up with a new way of worshipping that would get across this sense of family where we get together every Sunday morning. And I want to go, didn't Jesus tell us to break bread with one another, to show that we are family, to share a meal with one another? Where does the Eucharist fit in with that? I love standing at the font. On the weeks when I get to baptise, it is wonderful because you come to all the prayers that you're about to say about a sign that we're the Israelites being set free from Egypt, and you get to talk about Jesus being baptised in the Jordan and all of this. But before that, I get to stick my hands in water and say to the kids around me, what's this stuff? What do we do with this water? Oh, we drink it. Yeah, we do. We drink it. Without it, we're going to die. And what else do we do with it? Oh, it falls from the sky and it waters the crops. Yeah, it falls from the sky, it waters the crops, and the animals eat it, and it's one of the things that makes the world go round. Without it, but what else do we do with it? We wash with it. Yeah, we wash with it. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to symbolically show that God invites all of us in, that our sins can be washed away, that we can know God, because those things that we've done wrong can be taken away. Those stains that mar the true image of who we were created to be can be washed away. And now let's pray. You see all those things about the Israelites and Jesus in the Jordan and stuff like that. But at the heart of what we do is this wonderful gift given by God. As Jesus instructs us, go out and baptise people.
Yeah.
Go and pray for people. Share bread with people. The sacramental life for me is a glorious gift that has been given, and it's been freely given to the world, and sharing that with people is an awesome privilege. Awesome.
You can share a digestive if you want.
That's breaking bread, just tea and digestives, isn't it? It's Yorkshire.
We break Yorkshire puddings up there.
No chocolate ones.
Now, a question about your Harley.
About my Harley.
Yeah. How many kids turn out
Ruth's Harley.
Yeah. How many kids turn out to divert you while the rest strip the bike?
Yorkshire.
They wouldn't dare do that in Yorkshire.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, you wouldn't have any wheels left.
Well, when I was at Newcastle, I used to have a mini pickup, 1970 mini pickup, and when I was on teacher training in the centre of Newcastle, I had an 11-year-old kid ask me if my dust caps were welded on. I went, what? They went, your dust caps are welded on. We couldn't get them off. Turns out that the aluminium had corroded to the copper, and it was seized on good and proper. And this kid came to tell me that he tried to steal my dust caps, but he couldn't. Never had it with the Harley. Did have it with the plastic car.
Yeah, but we do get a lot of attention with the Harley, and especially when I'm on the front and Rob's riding pillion.
Do you wear it with a collar on? You know, with your collar on, so that the people can see who you are.
At the moment, with it being so bad weather, I haven't been using it as a day-to-day transport, really.
All right.
Because there's nothing more irritating than having to go somewhere to do something when you're working, when you've got to go somewhere to do something, it's only 5 minutes away, and you head to toe in waterproofs, and you spend the next 15 minutes not doing what you've gone there to do, but instead have to take your waterproofs off and
Yeah,
find
yeah.
somewhere to stash them and apologise to the people you've come to see. Might even just be going to have a cup of tea with someone on a pastoral visit. You
Yeah.
have to spend 15 minutes
Yeah.
in their hallway
Clobbering
taking
up
off your
and
waterproofs
declobbering.
when you get there. Just,
Yeah.
Our eldest son goes to a Pentecostal church, and his vicar there, he's got a Harley. He's
Yeah.
part of a
Steve.
bikers club,
all right.
but he does it as a form of outreach. He loves his Harley. It's that
Is
simple, you
he
know.
part of the Christian Motorcycle Association? That's what they're called, isn't it?
Yeah,
You got a friend-
possibly.
No
Possibly.
idea.
They call him Steve Shepherd. He's pastor of Waters Edge Church in Poole. Lovely guy.
Yeah, it's a very good pastor.
It's a lovely
Yeah.
pastor.
Right.
It's a national organisation,
Yeah,
isn't it?
CMA.
But there's different groups all over the
Yeah.
country.
Strangely enough, they nicknamed him the Rev as well.
That's because he revs.
Yeah, yeah.
But I suppose that was going to happen, won't it? I'm sure it's not just you that's nicknamed Rev. Eh?
It's not really a nickname, it's just a fact, isn't it? And that's what I am, the Reverend. It feels very strange when people call me Reverend.
Yeah.
I still haven't got my head around it.
I'll get you on to Bex's question now. What do you think are the distinctive traits of Christians who happen to be goths, and how the church engages with any subculture?
Are you a goth?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Am I a goth?
Not really.
So
no.
how historically did the church interact with them?
I got to university and said to Ruth, what are you doing on Sunday? She said, I'm going to church. And I think I said,
You said how sad, which now I think is incredibly funny because he's in charge of the church now. So, yeah, that was quite fun. I think that one of my experiences, kind of dressing differently. Some days I'm more gothy than others, but when we turned up at Christian Union at university, they didn't want to know us because we were different, and so we stopped going. The church that we went to was much better. Most
but
of
you
the
managed to
time.
fit in a lot better than I did.
Yeah. They were a bit better with me than you. I don't really understand what that was about, really.
I think it's because you're a girl.
Maybe.
Girls are allowed
It's
to
more
be goths a lot
acceptable.
more than boys are, even though I freely admit
Yeah.
I'm not a goth. I'm a
I think there's
hairy
been.
biker.
I think there are ranges of ways in which the church has interacted with people from different subcultures, and sometimes that's been positive, and sometimes it's been just
They
really
used to send,
negative.
they used to send people in there specifically for them, didn't they? No.
They have been. I mean, they're down in London. No, sorry, up in London. We're in the one South Coast right now. Up in London, there's a chaplain to the goth community at the moment. But and in some ways that's a good thing. But in certain ways it's kind of saying you need somebody different. You can't be part of our kind of mainstream church culture.
Well, I mean, that was my experience of growing up. I was a teenager wearing a denim jacket with patches all over it. Went to church for about 6 weeks and nobody wanted to speak to me. So when I got to the university and met you and you said you went to church, I said something along the lines of, but you're not allowed to go to church, you're into heavy metal. And that was what I had been told, was, if not explicitly, certainly implicitly through the way the church treated me.
Yeah, I mean actually, when I was about 15, as well as going to my dad's church on a Sunday morning, I went to a Pentecostal church on a Friday night to their youth service, and my friend and I, who were both into heavy metal and dressed appropriately, we were the only two there who were a bit different. And one night the pastor led a service and showed videos and things all about the sins of heavy metal, and it was clearly just directed at my friend and I, because nobody else was into that kind of stuff. And it was very obvious that they decided that they needed to target us and our sinful ways, because they needed to save our souls from heavy metal. And it was very odd, that they felt that they needed to do that rather than just maybe talk to
you.
us.
Yeah.
And I was vicar's daughter, so really, I should have been all right, really, but clearly not.
I think all our differences and all our prejudice should be quashed at the cross.
Yeah.
But Christians tend to forget that.
And they do, and it's very noticeable. And I think, not just when it comes to subcultures, but people with all sorts of natures of difference. And I mean, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I work in mental health services. And I think people with mental health problems are another group of people.
Hey, we could do with you in our house.
Oh, they could.
Who really stand out as having their needs really unmet by the church, because somebody walks into the church and clearly having those sorts of problems, and they're often shunned by everybody. I've seen it in a number of different churches that I've been in, that these people they
bad,
really
isn't
need
it?
Jesus.
But there's
more
nothing
than
worse than
anything.
Christians.
Can I just tell you, right, that in December, God led me to a guy with, he's got schizophrenia, okay, he's a schizophrenic, right? And I didn't know it at the time.
Both of them.
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time, but he was, Nikki and I, my wife and I, sorry, we were sort of looking for a different church, but we came back to the church that we were at previously, and the pastor and his wife lived across the road from Roland, this guy, and I went back to his flat, and in fact the first time I met him, he said, "Do you fancy going for a coffee?" And I was a bit in a bit of a rush, and I came out, and I felt the Holy Spirit sort of prompt me and say, "Well, you could have done a bit better there." So I went back to the car and I prayed for another opportunity that I'd meet him, and a week later I met him, and he said, "Do you want to go for a coffee?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." And I knew it was from God then, and I've been slowly walking with him, and a few months ago he gave his life to Jesus. Yeah.
And that's often that's all it takes, is that somebody just to have the time,
Yeah.
and the interest, and the gentleness really to be with people where they are, because Jesus didn't expect people to be perfect when he met them. He expected them to be broken, and that he was there to heal them. But so often in churches, people expect people to come in and behave like good, proper Christians should behave in church, rather than expecting them to come in and not know, because actually people don't know how to behave in church. People don't know what's expected of them.
I mean, that's
And
what
actually,
frightens a lot of people
It
of
does,
church,
yeah.
because they don't understand the formality of it, and they don't want it, and they feel uncomfortable with it.
And why should they?
And that should be casual, shouldn't it? It should be able to feel at home at church.
If I go somewhere new, I don't know what the rules are. Whether it's if I go.
The question is, have the Pharisees changed?
And they all have their traditions, don't they,
Can I
each
just
church?
add that the Lord is healing him as well.
Yeah.
Right, he was a really heavy smoker. He's still a heavy smoker, but he had a real problem with his speech, and it's typical of schizophrenic. I did a bit of research into the condition really, and he's walking and talking a lot better, and do you know what I mean? It's a gradual process,
Healing.
and but he's doing great. It's wonderful to see, It's just really wonderful to see that, and.
But so often people like that get turned away because they're not behaving properly.
Yeah.
They come into church and if they're hearing voices,
They don't fit in with the
if they're behaving
traditions.
properly, people don't want to speak to them. They stay away because because we're nice middle class Christian people. and
we have
don't
our
want
way
to
of doing
speak
things.
To
It's the
anybody
fear
who's
of
not.
man that's a snare.
And there's that fear, and the same goes for for goths or anybody who's different. Oh well, they don't fit into our nice little packaged idea of Victorian middle class Christianity. And I'm sorry, that's not who Jesus was.
No.
He didn't come to be middle class and Victorian.
No.
Or even
He
Queensland.
didn't come to save the righteous, did he?
No.
I remember that small group of heavy metal loving Christians who I met at university, 4, 5, 6 of you, and I was friends with you all and became a Christian. I could be one of them. And I remember, was it Tim who said, what would we do if John the Baptist turned up at the back of church? We'd sling him back out.
Yeah.
He doesn't fit into the package.
Eating locusts and wild honey at the back.
We would use words like mental. That man was mental. Get him out of here. And that'd be that. But I think it's funny. I think like breeds like. When I became a Christian, I found some people who were Christians who were like me, I thought I could be a Christian. No longer was I somebody who was outside. I didn't have to break my way in. I could be like them, and I could start following this guy. And when I became a Christian, it was people want to see it as the end point. People want to go, oh, he's become a Christian, we've succeeded, that's the end.
Yeah.
Whereas the reality is that this is the beginning of a journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where hopefully by the time I'm not on my deathbed, I might be a better person by the end of it, where I've finally walked this path following Jesus for long enough to...
Can never come to an end, can it? I mean, our learning and understanding is a continuous process. No matter how, who
Do you
we
get him
are.
on the right road from the beginning? I mean, David, strangely enough, is doing a discipleship course at Palmer very shortly. And I think like this is what people forget, that Jesus said to make disciples of all nations,
Not
just make
converts.
believers. Yeah. And I think that's where we very often fail as Christians. You know, they give their life to Jesus, so we clear off and look for our next project, if you like.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd like to ask you guys. How do you guys disciple then? Do you have a discipleship team, or do you just walk with people and? Because
Do you do outreach, in fact? Do you get involved in things like
It is
that?
a question, something that the church, well, the churches that I've been to anyway, a lot of the immediate church, seems to lack. It seems to have any structure for discipleship rather than a one-to-one walk. Because Jesus walked with his 12 men for 3 years.
Mm-hmm. We are a small church, and one of the key things about it is community and trying to find some way of building community cohesion into things. I mean, when you look at a group of... It sounds like a lot of people, but when you're looking at 50 people, 60 people, ranging from... Who's our youngest?
2.
She's only just started walking.
1.5.
Kirsty, yeah, must be 1. To Phil was
101 and a half?
something like that, and putting together a community who work together and love each other and respect each other when there is such a wide variety there. There's something I would strive for. People want to put together a church for young people. People want to put together a church for old people. We'll have the old people here, we'll have the young people over here. We'll have the men over here, we'll have the women over there. And trying to segregate and put together different niche markets. It's much more difficult trying to get everybody together. We've got one group at one of our churches called Cherubs who works with young mums who are... we realised we had got a lot of postnatal depression in town. We'd got a much higher rate of postnatal depression than anywhere else in the local area. What would we do about it? And there is a wonderful bunch of pensioners, old women, who have had children of their own and grandchildren who run this creche, for want of a better word, this creche thing, where on a Thursday morning they get together and the young mums can meet together. They can form networks with one another. They will be given biscuits and tea, and their kids can play together, and they will foster these relationships. And these people who so many churches want to, younger focused churches want to say have nothing to give. There's these old ladies who are passing on their wisdom to people who need someone to turn to. I'm struggling with breastfeeding my kid. Now, and I know nought about breastfeeding children. I haven't got any kids of my own. I've no idea. But this wisdom being passed from one to another, we've become so disparate in society where we end up with people who don't know their neighbours. You were saying earlier on you liked it in Yorkshire where you knew everybody who you lived around, and you found a cul-de-sac here who everybody knows their neighbour. That is disappearing everywhere, and nobody has anyone to turn to, and that mentoring that used to go on. Brian McLaren talks about apprenticeship. He talks about how in Buddhism they have this sense of apprenticeship. You find your master and you follow them, and how we've lost it in Christianity. There's people who make violins, the Stradivarius of the world, who can pick up a piece of wood and tell you if it was going to be a good violin. Hold that piece of wood. Is that going to be a good violin? I've no idea, master. Feel it, feel the weight, and it's that sense of something that's caught rather than taught. I'm very keen on spotting how many times people refer to the scriptures in this room whilst I'm talking. I talk about something and someone will say, "Oh, it's just like," and it will come back to that. And that's the sort of thing that often sitting with the Bible, it doesn't seep in quite the same way as somebody pointing you in the right direction. How many times do we sit and listen to a teacher telling us a story rather than reading the book ourselves?
I think you mentioned, do you have any kind of programs or anything like that? And I think sometimes, people get really caught up in, if we just had the right program, then it would be okay. And I think, things like Alpha or whatever, it's not that they're bad things necessarily, but, and they can be really helpful. And I know people have come to faith through things like Alpha. But I think sometimes we just get caught up in the idea of, if we just did the right thing or had the right Bible course or, had the right person, then everything will be okay. But I think, like Rob's saying, actually it's much more about these relationships and these communities. And if we can build those and if we can get to know people and be with them, that's much more helpful than the right book or the right course or the right program, because these are tools and they can be useful. But ultimately, as you said, Jesus was there and he was with the 12 and he walked alongside them. And I think that is much more powerful than any book or course that we might try and put on to disciple people. It's about being with people and being alongside them that's actually going to do the job.
I think as well it's about seeing people as people, not looking at the outer packaging and saying, I don't want to talk to you, you're not my ideal person. It's looking at people and seeing that they are people. We are all in that same boat. We all need help, we all need Jesus, and we all need that person to talk to us and take notice of us. Whoever we are, whatever problems we have, are not the point. It's the point of, rather than label someone, love them. And I think God spoke to me about this a while back, because we were in town one day and it was really, really cold, and there was this icy wind, and I was so cold. I had my coat on, my jumpers, and I was so cold. And this old guy stood in the car park, and we parked up to go to Sainsbury's. And as we were walking towards him, I saw him, and for some reason, it was an homeless guy, and I was so frightened of this guy, and he was nothing to, that was threatening or anything like that. And as we walked past him, Chris stopped to talk to this guy, because it was really, really freezing, and I just wanted to get into the supermarket, get what we wanted and go home. I was so cold and thinking about me. And as we came out of the supermarket, Chris said to me, go give this man some money so it'll get him into a night shelter for a couple of nights, because he won't survive in this cold. And I sort of reluctantly took some money out of my pocket and walked up to him, and as I put the money in his hand, it was incredibly warm. And I didn't say anything to him, and I looked in his eyes, and his eyes sort of shone. And afterwards I felt really guilty that, why was I so frightened of this man, and why was I so reluctant to give him money? I was really convicted by the Spirit, and I'd kind of labelled this guy, and I was frightened of him. But afterwards I felt that it was like meeting an angel, because angels are in all sorts of forms, and it just sort of taught me to don't label people, just love them as Jesus did. That really spoke to me deeply.
I think with that we'll close.
Sorry.
Chris, you can pray for us.
I will. Okay. Father God, we thank you so much for a wonderful day today. We thank you so much, Lord.